So welcome to the Nursery Grower and Garden Center Town Hall. This was actually formally the growers' dinner, the fall dinner meeting. And then a year or two ago, we started having more interaction with other commodity sectors. And it's now morphed into a town hall. And every year we come together to discuss some of the current issues, since we're all together in the same value chain. And before we get started, I first wanted to acknowledge the recent passing of Neil Vanderkruk of NVK Nurseries. Neil passed away just this past weekend, and he had his family by his side, and it was a very peaceful passing. He was in his 84th year. He was a horticultural pioneer and dedicated his life to his family and to NVK Connon Nurseries. He was a founding member of Landscape Ontario and also a major force in the foundation. He was really a force of nature, and he will be missed, and our hearts go out to the Vanderkruk family right now. So I just want to take a moment and say that. So our theme today, the focus of this town hall, is surviving COVID-19 in 2020, which we sort of have so far. So good. We've got a little bit to go, and how we can work together for a strong 2021. So just a little bit of background and history of events. COVID-19 created huge challenges across the agri-food supply chain for ornamental plants this year. And at first, it wasn't even clear whether wholesale nursery operations were considered essential under the provincial order. But even after nursery and floriculture operations were deemed essential, their customers, including re-wholesalers, garden centers, florists, landscapers, and all the related service providers, were not. And as a result, producers were not able to move highly perishable plant products to consumers, resulting in significant losses, especially to the floriculture industry, many of whom rely on those Easter time sales to make up a large portion of their annual income. And as the markets closed, the nursery and landscape retail garden center sector with Landscape Ontario, also the Garden Writers of Ontario, and the OMAFRA floriculture and nursery team of specialists knew we all had to step up and support the green industry value chain and ensure that these issues and impacts for the industry were being heard by decision makers. And thanks to this huge team effort, the floriculture and nursery sector value chains were deemed essential just before Mother's Day, allowing retail and service-related industries to open as long as they utilized distancing barriers, sanitation measures to keep staff and customers safe, which was an incredible announcement for all of us. So retrofitting and re-engineering wholesale, retail, service-based horticultural operations under the new public health regulations presented huge challenges over very narrow timelines, but the industry jumped right in, and the gardening renaissance that unfolded in 2020 was unprecedented. So today we've assembled a very strong group of horticultural leaders, and representing the retail garden sector, we have Perry Grobe, owner of Grobe Nurseries. Here he is. Art Vanden, president of retail operations at Sheridan Nurseries. We've got, representing the wholesale nursery sector, although some of you also do retail, we've got John Langendoen, president of Willowbrook Nurseries. Jeff Olsen, president, CEO of Brookdale Treeland Nurseries. And Rob Vanderkruk, president of Connon Nurseries. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. It is absolutely wonderful to be able to come together virtually like this with all of you. I know I really appreciate this opportunity. So again, our focus today is surviving COVID-19 in 2020 and how can we work together for a strong 2021. So for those of you that are attendees at this event, you can type your questions into the chat function at the right of your screen. And after the panel discussion, We have a series of our own questions, and that will facilitate discussion. After that, we're going to be answering your questions that come in, and I'll read them out. We have this platform booked until 6:30. We expect it to go just over an hour or so, but we don't need to stress about time. So we'll probably won't take the whole time period, but we have it just in case. So dinner might be held off just a little bit for some of you. So guys, it's been quite a year and it's not over yet. I thought we could jump right in the discussion and start by asking the question, what do you know about doing business during COVID-19 now that you wish you had known at the start? Oh.
I'll start off on that question, Jen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That we'd only be closed for 6 weeks when we were told that we couldn't ship to our garden centers, that they were closed. We made some pretty tough production decisions. We cut back on production, and so as a result, we were short product for next spring. We cut back on propagation as well as potting. And we worked hard to try to make up for that, but it was a pretty tough challenge, and we're still going to be short for spring. That's probably the biggest regret, I guess, that we couldn't see down the road. But yeah, it is what it is.
For sure.
I can jump in next. I'll call this section hindsight 2020. Just because, boy, if we only knew what was going to happen with this industry after things reopened, it would be, the crystal ball would have been nice. I think the biggest thing from our end was understanding how crazy the online business was going to be going. That was just a total shock for us. And we fulfill for lots of large retailers. But instead of shipping it to their stores, we just started fulfilling online, and we saw 1,000% growth in trying to ship packages out to people. And if we only knew that ahead of time, we would have been prepared with all of the shipping materials, all of the, the boxes, the labels, and all of that kind of stuff. So if we could have forecasted anything. And to be honest, that's continued right through the whole of 2020 and right into next year. So, it's love to have known that.
Mm-hmm. It would also been nice to know maybe if we'd known and invested in some Zoom stock.
Yeah.
It can't possibly keep going up, can it? No.
I'll add in as well. From our perspective, certainly I agree with everything that's been mentioned before, but you cannot underestimate the power of the increased demand on our products. It's really been unprecedented, and it's been, you really feel like we're in a position where the general public have been able to come for some real genuine healthy living and therapy, and the quality of life stuff that we've been able to provide has been really fantastic. But along with all of this demand, certainly the capacity for products that weren't necessarily available, but also the staffing requirements, working through May and June and getting back and really, how do you plan for, like multi-double digit increases in business over a long period of time, and the extra resources, people resources that we needed? So hats off to, the whole industry. I think, we've responded quite admirably.
In addition to the things that have been said, I think this season spoke loudly to obviously the safety culture that we either had or did not have, I guess, off the onset. And I think, one of the things that we wish we had known ahead of time, I guess, is how much of a role that would have played into the season right from beginning to end. And that is just a feeling of safety for our customers and our staff. I think that was essentially the biggest enabler that we had, that we really felt right through the year. Back to a point that Don made, but I just want to elaborate on that. Never have we ever felt, I guess, maybe the interdependence that we have from supplier to seller as we have this past season, and the need for adequate, supply chain, as well as just having those strong relationships in terms of getting product to our shelves fast. That was certainly something that I guess, someone said the crystal ball. I mean, if that was the one thing that we as an organization could have said, hey, we really need to focus on that in March, in addition to the things that we did, it would have been that. It's on the product supply.
Yeah, I think if I had known, I would have bought a heck of a lot more dirt than we ever had. I think, the fellows have said it so well. We had to go back and look at so closely traffic flow. When I was a university student over at Guelph, I was a bouncer at the on-campus bar, and never before since then have I been so concerned about the numbers of people coming into the store and how far apart they are, and making sure they're queued up right to get in there. And it still really is the thing that I think about more than anything, is that our business is so reliant on having a lot of people at a short period of time. And how do we manage that? How do we manage? Things would be easy if they came every 5 minutes, like clockwork. You could run them through. But the fact that they all want to come at the same time, and how do we reconcile their demands to see what we have with the ability of limiting the amount of space that we have and how many people can see that stuff at one time. So if I had to know then what I know now, the only thing would have been I would have started thinking about that even much sooner if we could have. But and knowing how long this is going to last, the uncertainty we had in March and April was probably one of the most stressful times in my life. When they said we could open in May, there was such a flood of relief. And then dread, because, oh my God, it's going to be crazy, So I have to say, I'm with Art. I think given the uncertainty on the retail side of things, that we were really almost day by day trying to change our way of dealing with things, the fact that we were able to step up in limited time and to get that out was admirable.
For sure. Jeff, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did. Mine was the online piece, the hindsight 2020.
Okay,
so
we're all good. We're all good.
Thanks.
We're getting a bit of feedback on the line. If you guys wouldn't mind just muting your line when you're not speaking, for some reason. Mute your mic. Okay, question 2. So what are some of the wins, the business practices that have turned out to be the most effective to keep you operating during COVID-19? And some of these might have been a bit of a surprise.
I'll start again. Talk a bit more about myself, more than anything. I've been doing this for 41 years, and so you're so ingrained to springtime about getting busy, focusing on just shipping, potting, pruning, spacing, all these things, and then it came to an end. Standing in the warehouse on the Good Friday weekend, and not a plant in sight, not a tractor, an employee. The place was empty. Just freaked me out, and it was a shock. What helped to get me through all that was every Tuesday, Jen, you had a 4 o'clock meeting at Tuesday, 4 o'clock. We got together as growers, as well as LO staff, as well as Jamie, yourself, Jen, and we talked about strategy, talked about what we could do. So that whole connection right there was, for me, was such a support mechanism, and that was crucial for me to get through this, because I just couldn't believe what was happening. I just refused to believe it was happening, but there it was. And the fact that we could put, as a group, along with the garden writers, we could put Doug Ford to the wall. We gave him an ultimatum, and he blinked. I just got to thank the organization, all of you who got involved in this, to open the doors again. That was huge. The other thing that happened too was that only half of Mexicans came in. Out of 102 Mexicans, only 55 came in. So we were desperately short for help. And so we had a short window for shipping. But because it happened in springtime, schools were closed. We hired a lot of students, high school students, university students. And at first they were a bit clumsy and awkward, but once they got the hang of it, they were a lot of fun. They were rambunctious. They were, they didn't always observe code of protocol. We had to keep reminding them, but they just were a ton of fun. And so we had about 55, 60 students working for us to help us with shipping. And that was a great experience working with them.
Wonderful, because there was a lot of kids off school, right? And not all of them had their curriculum in place that they could do schoolwork from home. So amazing, the opportunities that came. And that Tuesday 4 o'clock call was a pretty big deal for a lot of us. So I'm glad to hear that feedback. Perry, do you want
to? So I would say that the most effective for us was, first of all, we realized very early that staying closed was not an option, and we had to figure a way to design during the time we were shut down how to open safely. So being closed in March actually gave us some time to figure out how we would implement that. We realized very soon that the biggest part of online ordering is order fulfillment rather than order taking. And we recognize that others might be better suited to absorb the increased costs of order picking on small margin items. So we selectively chose items that were easier to fulfill, that were at hand, that we had in stock, and that certainly helped things. Helped our both our cash flow. It helped also our fulfillment. We also tended to allocate specific times for specific functions. Specifically, when, in particular, when we were implementing curbside and being open at the same time. So we would take orders in the evening. We would only permit paying for curbside at specific times before we opened. We arranged for pickups only in the afternoons. There was no phone and pay in the parking lot sort of things. And that certainly was very effective in helping us deal with some of that stuff. We recognized too that if we had fewer people in the store, it meant that we had to actually have those people through the store quicker, and realizing how to get them frequent turnover and speeding the flow of traffic was imperative. And then we had to make it happen. And lastly, that I would say was most effective, maybe effective, maybe scared them, I don't know. But at the very outset, when we were allowed to open in May, I took a role of making sure at the front of my store, I was explaining to the queue of people that were there, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's the goal behind it, here's why we're asking you to kind of speed your plans, your purchases. And I think, honestly, I think there was an awful sense of relief in some cases, the fact that, hey, you know, it's not a secret, we're trying to figure out what we're doing here too. And I think it made a big difference how it all went on for us.
Thank you. A lot of people, I mean, you all know, but in terms of the public, they have no idea just how much more work it is to assemble those orders. I mean, the idea of curbside pickup and online ordering was horrendously labor intensive and extra maintenance as well. Hats off to you. Rob, do you have some comments?
Two wins that I'd like to speak to for a minute would be the industry in itself. I think went through a period in March going into April where it almost felt as though we had to justify our essentiality, if that's a word. You know, and I think we very much felt like that. And I remember having a couple of conversations with, in fact, a few of the people on this group as well, and maybe in the last town hall, but we felt as though, even though as a young kid, I believe that we always believed in our hearts that we were an essential industry and that we supplied fruits and vegetables, we supplied trees for clean air, we supplied healthy activity, we promoted mental activities that were good for our mental well-being. All these things were maybe ingrained in me already as a young person, and then to hear feedback from the world that says you're either essential or you're not, and to put us in that bracket of non-essential, I was going to fight that till the bitter end. I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but we are essential, and is how I felt. And so the industry itself, I think maybe went through that pain of recognizing that maybe we were on the table of well, are they, aren't they? And so I think that's probably what spurred on the efforts that came out of the growers group too, and hats off to, again, all those people that helped out with that. But the idea that one way or the other, we've got to get through to people and get a voice out there that we are an essential industry. And so to me, that was just such a huge win, just for our industry to be recognized as that. And one of the first few out of the gates aside from groceries. So, I just love that, the way that unfolded. And then I guess maybe secondly, for our own organization, I think maybe just recognizing in our own organization that we don't move ahead without the full support of our customers and our staff. We're going nowhere without them, and we felt, in management at Connons, we really felt that our job was to rally the troops, and to make sure that we weren't proceeding ahead of them, but with them when it came to our staff, when it came to our customers. I think maybe just that mindset felt very much like a win to us through the course of the year, because we had the support of our customers and our staff, and we felt that all the way through the year. It was just great.
Very much. Thank you.
I'll chime in now. I'd really like to talk a little bit about, in my 30 or so years in retail gardening, we'd never been in an environment that was such demand for our products. We've always gone through spring and now here we are in Christmas season, where your marketing and your promotional plans were so paramount to how we were going to be successful. But it was very different to work in an environment where fulfillment was really the only thing that we had to do. We had to get the product, and we had to, and oftentimes go to different and new suppliers. But keeping the shelves stocked was the most important thing to do, and the demand, like I was saying earlier, would jump on that. I also want to talk about managing and planning on the fly, and it was such a new environment, but initially it was 3 or 4 conference calls a week with all my team members and figuring out how we're going to do it, and just a good line of communication, but planning on the fly and then revisiting and making decisions that you could roll out the same day or the next day to improve things, was, I think, one of the most impressive things that happened. How, we were struggling, and like curbside pickup and the e-commerce and the telephone business was such a clunky, cumbersome business model, but we did get better every week at it. We got better at it as we refined, revisited, rolled out best practices, and again, it's a testament to the people in the industry that we were able to react that quickly. So, and the demand just, again, it just kept up and up. So, lucky for us.
Jeff, do you have any anything to add?
Yeah. I think it was in Schindler's List when Oscar Schindler said there's the two most important things in life are to have a forgiving priest and a brilliant accountant. And for us during this time, on top of everything else that all the panelists said, having an accountant or an accounting team that, because obviously when this happened in March, as many growers, we're at the height of our spending. We're at the height of our bank's lines of credits, and that's where the stress comes in. When the money's going out, you just assume the money's going to come right back in 30 days later when you start shipping. When you're not shipping, the money still keeps going out, but there's no hope that maybe it's going to come back in. So having this great accounting team that could access the multitude of programs, and the government threw a ton of money at this industry and at all business, and unprecedented amounts of financial aid for those affected by the pandemic, and it continues today. So anybody running a business out there, I would just, for us, it has been an unbelievable time to have knowledge and insight into those programs, and you can really use those programs as help to the bottom line of the business, but also just we don't know what's going to happen, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. So just make sure you're accessing as many of those programs as you possibly can.
That is good advice. So I have another question for you. So what business practices have you had to drop to keep doing business during COVID-19 this year? And maybe this time I'm going to start with Jeff and go in reverse order, so he has a chance to speak first.
Sure. This is one of my favorites because these are things that we thought were norms to our business that we realized through the 8 months of the past 8 months that we really don't need them, and that we can survive without them and thrive without them. I'll start with business travel. 2 years ago, I was on 133 Air Canada planes in 2018. I was on none in 2020. And that to be, to be home all the time, but also for my team not to have to travel. We just realized you don't have to do it. And we thought it was just something that we had to do. You had to fly all over the place to see clients. You had to go see trade shows, and you had to do this and you had to do that. And that, that'll come back a little bit, but we realized, you can do it virtually and save a fortune while you're doing it. Traveling from farm to farm, we run 6 locations, we don't travel farm to farm. We do Teams meetings, we do Zoom meetings. And that is, again, to the bottom line, it's expensive. And finally, I'll just say that sales meetings with clients has been something that we do virtually, and it's more effective. We can Zoom right in our nursery, show them product that is live, and it's actually more effective than running out spending money on a salesperson to go see a client. So I think those are 3 things that I found amazing coming out of this.
Yeah, and you make a really good point. I mean, yes, there is a cost to travel, but I think the biggest cost is time, which, we cannot put a dollar value on at all. And that is something we've been really able to reclaim in a big way. And it's going to be hard to give that all up again, isn't it? Art, would you like to join?
Sure thing. We had an opportunity through May to revisit our plant warranties. And, when we were just opening up again, we actually put a temporary suspension on plant warranties. And, we opened it up again. We said, we made it clear that we weren't reneging on warranties, but just with the amount of anxiety and foot traffic, we wanted to shut it down. When we opened it back up in the first week in June, we were prepared for a major onslaught of replacements coming into the stores where we were bringing in additional dumpsters to handle stuff. And, lo and behold, all of these plants that people traditionally think are dead in late April, outside of the evergreens, of course, but when things settled down by the end of June, we had huge improvements in our replacements. So there was a lot less stuff being replaced. So that's causing us to revisit how we're going to be handling that in springs going forward. I also wanted to mention, like Jeff had talked about with travel. So, I've actually found that having one-on-one Teams calls with my team members, we've been able to have a much more focused, less distracted agenda. So for me, it like you said, the windshield time, the driving time can be cut down substantially, but also the quality of the interaction between people can be improved by looking at the positive parts of just focused communication through media like this. So there will be more long-term learnings that are going to be the benefit to all of us that are going to come out of this. We didn't know how much business we could do in a short period of time, and you couldn't, if we told people, your business is going to be up 10% when you're at your peak, they'd just say you're nuts. But lo and behold, we just kind of the bars were all reset on what we can do.
For sure. Absolutely. Rob, would you like to chime in? Oh, we can't hear you, Rob.
We good now?
Yeah.
I think I had some of the same pros written down. I think maybe to speak to the negative side, we miss people, in terms of just relationships. One of the things that we've always valued in our business, and I'm sure in others as well, is just the ability to be able to go see our suppliers, and spend time with them and spend time maybe, in the whatever it might be, manufacturing plant, or whether it be a grower's field. And, I got to tell you, this past fall for me, I really missed that personally. We learned so much and we established so much in terms of business connections face to face. Other areas that perhaps maybe I think, yeah, we can all do without it for a year, but, and I completely agree with the idea of, maybe not traveling to the ends of the earth in the future wouldn't be a bad idea if we can do it over Zoom. But I would say that some of the social activities that we've done in the past with our staff, things like educational, we have a retail component to our business as well. Things like educational seminars, company events with staff, et cetera. These are all things, tours through the nursery. These are all things that, person to person are things that I can say that we, from our perspective, we miss that terribly.
Yeah, completely. I understand. Perry, do you want to chime in?
One of the things that we identified pretty early is the people who were important to us that we had in staff. We were going to focus on being able to manage that which we could do and shed those things that we didn't think we could do well or do safely. So this year we shed all of our landscape work that we would normally do. We shed all of our planting work that we would normally do, tree planting and such. And I have to say for me that, the tree planting particularly, it was always a service, that, I took pride in the fact that we could actually accomplish it from beginning to end. It's not, it may be, there are some garden centers that don't do planting work and landscape work, and I get that. My background in design helped, in my mind, it was sort of a part that I never thought I would be wanting to leave. We suspended a lot of our person-to-person design services too until well into the season. And I would say that the one thing that was clearly obvious is that going forward, I don't know whether we will reinstate some of that back to our business model, because both finding the appropriate help to do the work and the quality that we're accustomed to, and the excess toll it took on the staff that we would have if we had to do that, in addition to not being able to direct and service the clientele we have in the store. I have to say it was something I didn't like seeing go, but I know we didn't seem to miss it as much as we thought we would too. So in that respect, I know in the case of not being able to see some of the better clientele that I have, and you were saying, like what Rob was saying about the personal interaction, it's been difficult to let some of that go. I agree, but going forward, I think I'd like to keep the people we have happy at what we're doing, and keeping the customers we have here happy that are visiting us. If it meant circling the wagons with the staff we had to kind of be able to do that, that's really, I think, what we're going to have to do going forward.
Thank you. John, do you have any points you'd like to add to that? You'll have to. That's the danger of muting your mic.
So, yeah, we're a small industry. I mean, I travel all through North America. I love traveling to trade shows, looking for things. I'm the guy that looks for new introductions, new trends, that kind of stuff, and trade shows are a huge part of that. These introductions, and I miss that part a lot. And this winter, this fall, there's not much happening in trade shows. It's too bad. I just heard that the TPI show in Florida also has been canceled. And the other thing too is I love traveling and visiting nurseries. When you're face to face, you're able to network better. You're able to make better deals looking eyeball to eyeball. I'm a bit of a grinder. But yeah, it's I really missed that part of it. It has been more cumbersome for me this fall trying to put everything together, because I haven't had those visits. And because there is quite a shortage in industry, it's made it much more difficult to put our plans together for spring.
There's a lot to be said for those interactions and the knowledge sharing. I mean, it's such a complex, multifaceted industry, and in my experience, hardly any of you produce the same plant in the same way. And so the other part of that is we're always learning from each other. So when we don't get those opportunities, then we feel a little bit more stagnated. And yeah, we sometimes don't advance like we could. So I was wondering if you guys could share a success story that you've had with your staff this year. So with the many, many aspects of COVID-19 impacts on staff, I mean, anxiety levels were pretty high in some cases and at certain periods. What kinds of things help to make it easier on your staff? And John, would you like to start this time? We'll go back in reverse order.
Sure. One small thing that we did, but kind of a cool thing, and we're going to keep it, by the way, is that we supply landscapers as well. So they're always coming and going. Truck drivers making deliveries, whether it's plant material, whether it's supplies. Truck drivers will come in to pick up their loads, that sort of thing. They used to come walk into the office and just talk their heads off and talk loud, interrupt all of us. So we put up signs on the driveway as well. You got to call in first, make an appointment, and tell us who you are, where you dropping off. And we built a little kiosk, or it's actually just part of our office, punched a hole in the wall. It's like a Tim Hortons kiosk, and everybody has to go through this kiosk. And so we dedicated one person for that. She's a pretty tough lady. So there's a few little holes in there, sort of thing, and a little flap so she could put paperwork through there. But it kept a lot of the noise in the office to a minimum. And so cut the truck drivers out, cold call salespeople, kept them out of the office. It just made, so for us in the office, all of us working together, it was a whole lot more peace. And some of us in the office took this, COVID thing more seriously or just more emotionally. It was more an issue for them. And this gave them a lot of comfort because some refused to come back to work until we had this set up. And so I think that's staying with us. We're going to keep that going. That's just a little kiosk thing. Not much of an investment, but it was a big deal for us in the office.
Very cool. Very cool. Perry, do you have something to add?
I know for us, the staff, I was blessed. We opted out very early to keep everyone working right through March. We came up with a process to make that possible. I spoke with my heart to the staff and said, here, look, we don't know what's going to happen going forward. If any of you feel uncomfortable being here and wish to leave, we will make that possible. And I was lucky and blessed that none of them chose to do that. So I had some health issues, a lack of that many did not have, I think. I know for me, one of the things that we gained for the staff that I thought really worked out, they were instrumental in designing some of the processes on how we would speed things up and make things very quick through our till lanes, how we would manage the flow. There was a real team effort with that. And I think the other thing that we did that is probably going to maintain afterwards is we shortened our hours, not as a cost saving measure, but I know in the summertime we closed on Mondays. We've never done that ever. My father said to me, it goes back to when he first started, it was closed on Sundays. Nobody would work Sundays, he said. So looking back at something we used to do, but we closed on Mondays. The staff really, I think, relished that through the summer months. We extended it right until Thanksgiving. And I have to say, I think we'd be hard pressed to bring it back. I think we all needed the extra break, and we didn't find that sales suffered on that day not being open. So I think, that for me, you learn things and the staff, their dedication to keeping us successful, there's just I wouldn't have done anything without them. It really helped a ton.
That's amazing. That's the resounding feedback I get from every nursery grower that I speak to this year is I just cannot believe how much my staff has stepped up. And whether it's local or temporary foreign workers, just incredible stories of camaraderie and teamwork. Rob, do you want to chime in? Yeah, put your mic on. Yeah, I know. But it's quieter now that you're muting your mic in between.
My point would be sort of riddled through some of the conversation that's already been had, I guess, and that is one of the things that we noticed about this past year is how much we were dependent on procedures, protocol, systems, right? And especially for the off-site locations that, I think all of us operate, that becomes critical in terms of how people feel about whether or not they're on the right path, and so the need for systems and protocol this year was super strong. And you might say that in the past, there was a bit of a feeling of just kind of paying homage to it, right? We were going through the motions, right? Whereas this year, it sort of solidified the need for solid systems that everyone followed. And the beauty of it was that it wasn't because ownership or management said so. It's because we need to do this for safety's sake. So we saw a whole different sort of authority take over, and it really resonated with the staff, and they owned it. They owned it through the whole season. So I mean, what we took home from that and what we believe to be successful is that systems, protocol, procedures that you can actually document, write down, say, these are the things, this is how we operate as a company. We saw them working in real life.
Fantastic. Art, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. The message that I think was really important for us is that early in this process that, as a business, we developed a really strong bond with our employees. And I think we've always had a strong bond, but, the employees all as a group, they felt really, really, relieved in some ways, but to know that we have your back every step of the way, and whether that was dealing with the irate anti-maskers or the people that are defying or questioning the whole thing, we put and we made it very clear that employee safety is at the very top of the priorities. To the point where, yes, we have to close the store right now today because, we've had to deal with an outbreak or a COVID positive test. Like we consistently worked with our teams, but our staff, I think, were greatly appreciative of the fact that they knew that the company had their back. And again, I think that goes to the point where they have risen to new levels, and together we're achieving so much more. But trust in each other. They trust us, and we trust them to make the right decisions.
Fantastic. Jeff, would you like to say something?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said. I mean, our employees were certainly rock stars through this whole thing, especially given the fact that, we laid 60% of them off in the middle of March, not knowing whether the business was going to be there, was going to survive, and they didn't feel safe to be here. So a couple things that we did, and I thought, rewarding people financially was the key, because every money was the most important thing at that time. Where are we going to, if you're laid off, how are you going to, they didn't have the programs out yet, all of that kind of stuff. So after the first 2 weeks off, we sent 200. So we laid off about 100 people. We sent $200 grocery cards to all 100 people as a first step and as an interim step till I guess what it was called the CERB kicked in for a lot of the folks. And then those who did stay, which was, let's call it the other, 80 full-time folks that stayed, we wound up doing incentives at the end, in let's say June 1st, for between $500 and $2,000 per employee, just to thank them for getting through that period of time, and then we'll do that again for those who have stayed on through the balance of the season now, just as a thank you to them for working so hard through this, putting themselves really at risk. And I think one of the key things that we did in order to encourage people not to come to work when they didn't feel well was to ensure they knew they were going to get paid. And so that, if you have symptoms, if we had a policy that, was up to 2 weeks pay for symptoms and, not coming back until a negative test was in place. I know a lot of industries and a lot of companies, didn't want their people there if they were sick, but they weren't going to pay them. And people who are low wage earners, like in our industry, unfortunately, it's not a high paying industry, live paycheck to paycheck. And so they can't afford not to work. And so we wanted to encourage and make sure that financially they were taken care of through that period.
Yeah, it's so true. And a lot of those wage earners, pay is concentrated during that time of the year so that they can afford to, be laid off for part of the winter. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, and I'm going to start with Jeff. This is a fun question. What aspect of customer management was the thing that you found the most challenging? So the things that dare I say it, drove you a little bit bonkers? So this can apply to your wholesale customers as well as your retail.
Yeah, for us, so the first time in our history, we didn't go looking for new customers. Like, so that drives me crazy that we're not out there seeking new business. We just kind of held on and said, okay, once we open back up again, we said, okay, we're going to look after our clients that have been with us through this past 20 years. And we're not going to go, because the demand is there to seek new business, to seek new customers with the shortage in supply that's out there. Selling is not that difficult these days. But maintaining your relationships with your existing clients was key for us. And as I say, it's the first time I think in our history that we haven't sought a new significant client. So that was drove me a little bit crazy.
Art, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, sure thing. What I find most challenging is we pride ourselves being a high service retailer that depends on service, and at the same time, right now this year we're telling everybody to step back and be safe, and all of the safety protocols that are in place are not really complementary or a little bit opposite of our service standard. So it's balancing providing amazing service, which we still want to do, with being a little bit more stand back-ish, if that makes any sense. It's it's a tough thing to balance, but you have to, like I was actually kind of making some comments with some of our employees that, it's more important that you are safe and you behave like an ambassador as opposed to behaving like a guard, but you're still trying to achieve the same things. So yeah, dealing with that and making sure it doesn't hurt our long-term position.
Yeah, it can be a little overwhelming for some of your customers when they come in and they do need the help, but under all these protocols, you have to sort of do that dance. Yeah. Rob, would you like to add anything to the discussion?
Sure. Yeah, just one comment to add there, and that is, we definitely felt, while it's almost countercultural, and while the government's doing everything it can towards limiting the amount of shopping, limiting the amount of time that people spend, in close proximity, busting up crowds, the nursery industry and garden centers were accepting them all in bigger droves than we've ever had. So, that felt very conflicting through the course of the spring, and we either had to get good fast or get out, and I just want.
Oh no, we lost Rob. Uh-oh. Sorry, Rob. He'll come back in when he can. Perry, do you have anything to add to this point, to this question?
Yeah, I have to say that, what Art said about a guard versus affecting your long-term relationships, the thing that drove me crazy is that, we love our customers. We want to be with our customers. And but at the same time, we had to tell our customers in a strong way, no. Like in certain things, no. We're not going to be able to do this in this case. We're not going to be able to accommodate some of the things that you've expected in the past, largely as an exception, because it's an exceptional time. And there were some that were with us on that, and there were a very, very small number who were vocal and strident, and really took us to task. I think it's sort of like the anti-vaxxers or the anti-maskers, and I'm not saying necessarily that masking was the issue, but they don't understand. I don't think the general public didn't quite understand that a lot of them, or at least the very small number of the ones that we had that seemed to be the most vocal, that really it's not our choice necessarily to have to step back like Art had mentioned, and to be some of the personal things that were written or that I received in response to that, I have to say it was quite stressful, and it's the things that, for the most part, very happy with everything, but that sort of it always kind of gave me a sour taste in the mouth when you had to deal with in those situations. Like but the staff here know how I felt about some of these things, and it was really hard to swallow the assumptions made as a result of someone not being told no. Yes.
I can totally picture what you're talking about. John, do you have any, I'm sure you have some interesting customer management points. You just have to get your mic going again.
Again?
Yeah.
So after 40 years, we have some long-term customers, both landscapers that come in the yard, as well as garden center customers. And you develop relationship. It's not just business, it's also a family, and you go fishing trips together, you go to their weddings, that kind of stuff. And to step back from that and to say, well, you have to go to the kiosk at the back of the office or in order to talk to me, or it's got to be a Zoom, or it's got to be a telephone call or a cell call, whatever it is. It felt cold, it just and so relationship there was kind of put in a hold, and that part I didn't like. We're like I said before, and I think we've all said that before, we're close to the industry. Because the shipping season was condensed the way it was, the pressure on shipping was phenomenal. And I have to give my hat off to my staff. They accomplished so much in so little time. But we had to get tough on restricted customers. We're famous. We work hard at serving customers, doing last-minute additions, bending backward for small drop deliveries, and we had to say no. We can't do that. The board is loaded. We can't put more trucks on the board. You're going to have to wait till next week. What? You can't wait till next week. I want now. The shelves are empty. I got to have product now. Well, yeah, sorry, but we just can't do any more than what we're doing. And so that was hard. At the time, customers, some lost their cool and blew up at us. Later on, apologized, but that was tough. Never before have we had to do that like that to that extent, where we said, "Sorry, can't do it. See you next week." And so, that was a part that. And later on, it was fine. We made up for it, and they got over it. They realized we weren't the only ones treating them like that either. So yeah, that was one of the most challenging aspects of dealing with customers.
Mm-hmm. I have a quick question for you, and you don't all need to answer this. But what still needs to be done? What still needs to be implemented? What still needs to be fine-tuned for 2021 for your businesses to keep going in COVID-19?
I can give a quick one. I think for us, we especially in the last week where we realized we had vulnerability in our offshore housing in terms of our COVID protocols. Our workplaces are very safe, but I think there's still work to be done on the temporary foreign worker program accommodations, probably across the industry. And we need to take that seriously.
And there's funding programs out for that right now, which is great. You guys can take advantage of that. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to add?
Yeah, I'd like to add that, for us, one of the true opportunity areas for 2021 is to still increase our capacity to do business at peak. everything from how quickly a transaction goes through a cash register to managing the parking lot, to managing the lines, to managing the product placement, so that more people can come in and go through safely in the same amount of time. So, there were lineups right up until when we're closed. So outside of, like Perry had said, we can't stay open forever. We're going to burn our staff out. So we have to improve our efficiencies at how we do business each day, especially at peak time.
And I saw that with simplified pricing.
Yeah.
Which can really increase transaction time or reduce transaction times. Does anybody else have something they'd like to add to that conversation before we get to the last question?
Just this, I guess, and that's, we might, I hate to be the naysayer in the group, I guess. I'm sure there's others that think the same, but we might still be dealing with the same challenges as we get into 21 and beyond. And this could come back to us again in the future. And I would say we felt very much that we were all on our own. I think Jeff brought that up about, the York region area as well, but we felt we were all on our own to develop, establish, implement protocol into our operations, because I guess this has never been looked at or developed in the past, by those that are in the health sector. I'm assuming that this is being done behind the scenes anyways, but then I guess I would have assumed it was already done prior to. And that is this idea of, if it happens again, will we be better protected, and how? And I guess maybe as an industry, if we don't necessarily see it coming from anywhere else, what can we as an industry do to develop, this is our plan B if it happens again? I think we all got very creative this past spring. I think we all said, look, it's our livelihood here. We're going to have to figure this out real quick. And I got to say, there were aspects of that were even kind of fun. It was like starting a business all over again in certain pieces. But if you had to recreate it again, could we come at it as an industry from, look, this is our plan B. This is what we do if we end up in another pandemic again. This is how we operate. And I think if we put our heads together and come up with a system that makes sense for us, it also becomes a better presentation towards the governing bodies at the time it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think something else too is that if it was to happen again, is to working with the garden communicators and with the COVID team. They really stepped up and kept the pressure on government. I think government is our biggest threat through. They don't always make the best decisions. It took a lot of education from our association to speak to them. And I just give my hat off. I just thank them so much for all the hard work. I just can't thank them enough for what they've done. And I think we need to continue. We were meeting for a while afterward as a small group with the garden communicators. That's kind of fallen off. I mean, well, it's still time of year too, but I think back and again in early, late winter, during the winter months, we start up again. Maintaining that presence in social media that we are an essential industry, so that government doesn't step on us again, and through combined marketing. The other thing too, what Jeff talked about too, is that for us as growers and working with offshore workers, we're going to have to do a better job of looking after Mexicans. There's a lot of publicity out there. Some has been very negative for offshore workers, right or wrong, I'm not sure. But I think we're all painting with the same brush. That's a real threat. And we wouldn't want to lose that program or have compromised. That would be a real problem for us as industry.
And it's a really important program for those temporary foreign workers as well. It is a lifeline for them, their families, their communities. It's a really important exchange and partnership. For sure. My last question, and I'd like you guys to maybe look into your crystal ball just a little bit, what do you think that 2021 is going to look like? I think we all think it's going to look, in terms of COVID, same protocols and procedures and those types of things. But what do you think that it's going to look like for business, for sales, for opportunities for retail, landscape, wholesale, nursery in Ontario this year? What's your prediction? Who wants to go first?
I'm happy to jump in again. Sorry. Yeah, I'll kick it off. So I kind of always bought into the Carl Stenson theory of Christmas will tell you what spring is going to be like. And I can tell you, our Christmas business is about as large as our spring business, and from a volume standpoint. And what we're seeing is, in terms of demand out there, is between 50 and 100% comps on last year. We just can't keep up, with the demand that we're seeing, and I believe that we're going to see that continue to a very strong 2021. Try ordering a swimming pool, right? The amount of work that's carrying over just in the landscape sector into 2021. I think everybody will be booked at least till the end of 2021 by Christmas time, which is unprecedented. Mm-hmm. And so demand will, and people are not traveling this winter. Even the snowbirds, I bet 80% of them are not going to travel. Maybe more are not going to go south. So they've got disposable income. They've got time. People are going to be cooped up in their houses all winter long because you can't even buy a pair of skis, and you can't even get out in the winter time. So they're going to be cooped up. And what are they going to be doing in the spring? Looking through their garden to get some relief out there. This pandemic's still going to be around at least until middle 2021, if not middle 2022. So I think we're looking at unprecedented demand and very difficult situation with availability. So those two things combined, let's I don't want to say let's raise prices, but let's raise prices as much as we can, because every other industry is doing it, and it's prices for things. And this is a time to get what our stuff is worth. So I'll just throw that out there.
Mm-hmm. Those are good points.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. We have no choice but to raise prices because our suppliers are raising the prices. It's phenomenal. I mean, I used to buy off a grower for years and years, and all of a sudden I come back and it's kind of like, nope, sorry, this is the price. Take it or leave it. If you don't want it, somebody else can take it. So, and you say, yeah, okay, never mind, ship it because I have to have it. And that's going to be the problem too, I think, for us as industry, is having a supply, whether you're a retailer, a wholesaler, a grower, even liners, like try and buy perennial plugs and liners. That's backed up too. And so that goes back again to those growers in Central America who grow this stuff. They have a timeline and only so much available of facilities to grow stuff in. So even that is an issue. So and when you read these online magazines too, there's a lot of talk about first-time gardeners. Are they going to stay? Well, if COVID is here still next year, next May, they're going to be back again. So maybe maybe now there's it's ingrained in them, it's in their blood, and they're going to stay as gardeners. So maybe long term for us, the industry, we're on a high note.
If I have to throw one piece of skepticism in that, because we're forever optimistic as well and see a lot of good things ahead for next year, but if I have to throw one piece in there that speaks against that, and we've had to look at that from our buying side to say, look, how heavy do we buy going into next year? It would be, could we run into buyer fatigue by halfway through the season if COVID turns around? I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I do get tired of the same street, same house, and I'm dying to travel, and I'm dying to get out there again. And perhaps that might change my habits, if I'm the average consumer, on how much time I spend around my yard going into next
next year. And I guess that's the only piece that would maybe concern me about where it's heading by the time we get to the second half.
I know Jeff had mentioned the snowbirds. They're going to be a game changer for the first 3 months of the year, where these are people that are homeowners that don't have mortgages, that are used to they've got more discretionary income than any other group out there, and their homes have been retrofitted over the last 10 years to be basically empty in the winter. So the amount of indoor tropical gardening and therapy that's going to happen this winter is going to be, quite substantial. Overall, I think very small shifts in consumer behavior are going to be very good at sustaining growth in our industry. No doubt there will be people that will return to the normal spending habits and travel going forward, but there are going to be long-term shifts in people's behaviors that will be refreshing for our industry. And the rookie gardeners of 2020 are now going into their second year, and I think by and large, as a group, they were very excited about their success in gardening and are probably excited to take it to the next level for 2021. So, optimism, I think, is there, certainly for the next 18 to 36 months for COVID impact on our business.
For sure. And those rookie gardeners, many of them are under 10 years old and very influential, and spending quality time with family members that they probably never used to spend with, or even certainly not as much. And so those lasting imprints and memories, I think, will carry them through. I mean, that was my introduction to gardening with my grandmother when I was quite little. So there's some Dutch heritage back there, by the way, besides all it's not all Irish, just so you know. Perry, I think, is it, did you speak yet?
No, I'm, what Jeff said, we've always felt that Christmas is a bellwether for spring, and, would the sales that we saw in spring show up with people more concerned at Christmas? At the moment, Waterloo Region's red, known red is restricted red. I think if that could be held and it doesn't become a further lockdown, I think that it still will show us that spring will be as strong as maybe not as strong as this spring, but it'll still be very strong. It will be a good season. I believe, I think Rob at a previous meeting said something that really rung true to me, is that the change in sales amounts might be more to do with the fact there's no product on the shelf to generate those sales amounts than the actual desire to actually make the sale. And, being able to have those relationships with both the growers and our hard goods suppliers to make sure that doesn't happen, is going to be absolutely key going forward. If you were a kind of a person that had a problem with a vendor and you were treating them sort of in a poor way, I really wouldn't be sleeping very well right now if I were you, because you may have some difficulty going forward in trying to get what you need in order to generate those sales you're going to need to have.
Along those lines, there's a couple of questions on the chat room here, and one it relates to the retail panelists, especially. The question is, did you adjust your hours of operation this year, and will you continue that change into 2021? We decreased our hours and may never go back.
I'll answer that one. I answered it on the chat too, and we did. We did it to preserve our staff just from burnout. We recognized very quickly that we had to. We learned that, in fact, it was a desirable thing. and I don't foresee us going forward making a change, increasing it again.
And I'll add to that. Much like Perry, we reduced our hours, and we've actually reduced them through all of 2020. We've stayed at reduced hours and are now doing it through our Christmas season. It truly was to preserve the quality of our staff. However, it also became quite apparent that, in this environment, we did not need to be open until 9 p.m. and go through those periods in the summer where, you might get 2 or 3 transactions going through each location after 6:30 or 7 p.m. We didn't need to do that. We may have had staff, but they were restocking and getting the store ready for the next day's onslaught. So, and like Perry, I do not foresee that changing, although, there may be a window in May where there might be a need to, if we're staffed for it, can we squeeze an extra hour out of a day? When it's, again, that conversation about capacity, when capacity, it's harvest time, right? So even though it's the spring, for us it's harvest time, and it only comes once a year. So
absolutely. There's one last question here, which I'm surprised hasn't been asked yet, but do you guys foresee plant shortages for 2021 to continue into 2021? Do you have any details around that you'd like to tell people, share with people?
Well, I think some of the products that we grow are 4, 5, 6 year old plant or crops, like boxwoods, for example, fancy pine and spruce, that sort of thing, and those things too are hard to find right now. Good quality sizes, so those kind of crops will take a while for them to come back on stream again. So yes, I see a 2-3 year shortage of some of these things.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, I would have told you that it was only going to be long cycle product, older product that would be short. And then my growers came to me 2 weeks ago or last week and said, we're 100,000 square feet short on indoor space for the short cycle crops. So I think you're going to see shortages compared to demand, because demand is unprecedented. I mean, if we had a normal year where we were kind of, where we were 2 years ago, I think we'd probably, there wouldn't be any surpluses for once, which would be nice. But now we're looking at true shortages, which is concerning.
I think for us in retail, there are going to be shortages of first choice plants, but it's not going to get to the point where there's going to be empty shelves. So, there are slower moving lines that are going to have to move up the ladder, and displays will be full. We saw that in the peak of spring last year, where annuals were in extreme shortage, so perennials as a category picked up the slack. So there will be shortages, but it's not going to be like food shortages where there's going to be empty bakers' pantries. So it's not entirely a bad thing. In fact, I don't think it's a bad thing.
That's a really good point, Art. So we're talking about maybe less choice, but still lots of beautiful, fresh plant material.
I have to admit, I was blessed and lucky to be able to tour a little bit this summer, and I always marvel when I do it, the actual amount of product that is actually produced in the province itself. And I'm sort of in the same opinion that Art is. I think that those key things that people specifically are looking for that are maybe very trendy or hot or hyped or they will be in short supply, and as well they should be, because they're new and they're popular and they're hot. I think that I would agree with the sentiment that we may not have empty shelves. We may have to make the case for plants that have been long overlooked. Hydrangea varieties that's still in production, still that are good, but that aren't necessarily top of mind with people. So it doesn't mean I'm going to stock up on something that is not as popular, but it does mean that, when push gets to shove, a person's looking for beautiful color of a hydrangea in the summertime, they may take other varieties other than that, which is the most hyped one.
Mm-hmm. So how do you foresee the industry catching up on the shortages? That's the last question I've got in the chat line.
Back to 1 gallons.
Jeff is going to expand even more.
No, Jeff's not. What farmers always do, which is overproduce now so that we have surpluses 2 years from now and have to drop our price again.
Can I mark that on the calendar now? Because let's mark it now.
Isn't that the cycle?
Yeah.
I'm an old guy. I've seen that time and time again. And there's a real temptation to do that, but be careful. I think, especially in the U.S., a lot of growers were burned during the recession 08-09, and they've learned a lesson. They're just keeping their production tight, but they're raising prices to make up for the difference.
Mm-hmm. And everything has gotten more expensive. Everything. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Well, the time is 6:27. That was a fantastic discussion. I thank you all for spending this time with us, sharing your thoughts, your wisdom, your experience, your crystal ball, because I think a lot of it's going to come true. And I commend you for your incredible efforts to keeping this industry going, to being great leaders. And thank you so much. And I wish you all a wonderful evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jennifer. Take care.
Take care.